All right. Hello. Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I know it's early for some of you on the West Coast, so thank you for coming. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are, what your pronouns are, what you do, and where you're calling in from. My name is New Nguyen. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Vice President of AIGA Baltimore. And before we get started, I just want to get a couple housekeeping things out of the way. So we have a couple members online right now and volunteers to monitor the chat and the Q&A. So if you have any questions or issues, please feel free to flag us down. You can reach out to Francis, our president, or Kristen, one of our amazing volunteers. We'll also have Crystal and Carol online as well to help out as well. We also ask that you follow our code of conduct so that we can make this an enjoyable experience for everyone. Nothing too, aggressive in rules, just making sure that we're all being inclusive and friendly and welcoming to everybody present. So thank you again for joining us today. We are joined here with an incredible panel of guests, but before I introduce them, I'd love to spend some time talking about who AIGA is and what is on the horizon. So, what is AIGA? We are the Professional Association for Design. We're committed to advancing the value and impact of design both locally and globally, and we're working together to inspire, support, and learn from each other at every stage of our careers. So it doesn't matter if you're just graduated or you've been in the career for 20 years, we're all here to support each other. And we have over 74 local chapters run 100% by volunteers across the nation. Joining AIGA gets you access to exclusive member benefits such as discounted rates to local and national events, as well as discounts to things like Skillshare, Adobe, and Apple products. You get access to AIGA's job board, healthcare assistance, professional development webinars and workshops, conferences, and so much more. So if you aren't already a member and you're interested in becoming one, please head over to aiga.org to get started. Now, specifically, who is AIGA Baltimore? So our vision and strategy is that we provide value to the Baltimore design and creative community by making new connections between individuals, groups, and ideas. Our goal is to act as cheerleaders for our community. We act as a platform for members that can take advantage of to lift their skill sets and their visibility and their voices. And our motto is that we are not AIGA Baltimore, we are Baltimore's AIGA. We're here to serve you as a creative community. We want to make sure that we are representing Baltimore's best and brightest in the creative industries, and we want to get you guys involved. So the best way to do that is to become a volunteer. We are 100% volunteer run, like as mentioned, and you'll see here pictured are some of our board members, but we're always accepting volunteers year round to not only help out at events, but to contribute ideas and skills. It's a great way to connect with your creative community, not only locally, but nationally as well. And we have a number of initiatives coming up. Our largest one being Design Month coming up very soon. We'd love to get your input. And if you're interested in becoming a board member or volunteer, please reach out to us at info@baltimoreaiga.org or visit baltimore.aiga.org. And lastly, if you're looking to get your portfolio reviewed by some of the industry's best, today is the last day to register for part 2 of our Ink and Pixels portfolio review and workshops extravaganza taking place a week from today at Towson University. There will be a keynote presentation, really incredible workshops, and lots of time to mingle and network with some of the most incredibly talented people of our industry today. So there's a link that will be posted in the chat if you're interested. Today's the last day. So after today, sorry, as soon as you lose, but make sure you get that in because it's going to be a really great experience. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. we are here to talk about our panelists. So, one of my absolute favorite things about being a creative is how limitless you can be. Especially now, the industry is so rich in diversity, talent, experiences, and mediums. No matter if you're young or you're more experienced, it doesn't matter where you are in your career or what creative industry you're in. There are a lot of key things that are very similar that you want to keep in mind as you're going through the process of applying for a new job. So I'm really excited to introduce our amazing set of panelists today. These are just a small sample of the talented individuals that we have in our community. But first up, we have Nate Brubaker. He uses he, him pronouns. He's the owner and executive producer of Rockshore Media. Nate developed a passion for entrepreneurship and the creative industry at a very young age. After adventuring into short films with friends and taking on some wedding clients in high school, he took his love for film to the next level and established a full service video production company and pursued a degree in film from Stevenson University. What started off as a one-man team quickly turned into a 7+ employee operation, running one of the most innovative video production studios in Maryland today. So if you want to get a hold of him, here is some of his information. And just as a reminder, after our event today, we will be sharing a PDF of everyone's bios and information, as well as some statistics in terms of what's happening in the job hunting market right now. So if you don't capture all this right now, no worries. We will share that after. Next, we have Hillary Turnipseed, and apologies, I realized I spelled her name wrong on here. It's Hilliary. So Hillary Turnipseed is a DMV area-based talent acquisition executive with a rich background in early-stage technology startups, media, and social impact organizations. She seamlessly integrates diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies into her work with an emphasis on advocating for underrepresented and underestimated candidates and creating two-way interviewing experiences. Hillary has supported recruitment efforts for notable organizations such as Discovery, Black Girls Code, Politico, and Curiosity Stream. And currently, Hillary leads recruitment and DEI for Washington, D.C. based creative advocacy firm Subject Matter, in addition to her running her talent advisory consultancy, Hill Street Strategies. So please feel free to reach out to her. She uses she, her pronouns. And next we have Jordan Watts, he, him. He is currently the design director at Fearless. And Jordan has spent his career working to rebuild trust in government and public institutions. As a design technologist, he has designed environmental advocacy campaigns for the National Aquarium, volunteers programs for the International Book Bank, and web products for the U.S. Small Business Administration. As a director of design at Fearless, Jordan leads a multidisciplinary design practice to help people deliver and get better government services. So please give Jordan a warm welcome. And last but certainly not least, we have Amy Quarles. It says she's our director, but she just recently got promoted to creative director, so major congratulations to her. She is currently the creative director at AIGA Baltimore, and she uses she, her pronouns. Amy began her career as an in-house graphic designer at a labor union in Washington, D.C., and moved to the leisure and tourism marketing space in 2007, where she's been ever since. Amy works with one full-time in-house graphic designer and marketing manager, and a small group of freelance creatives, photographers, illustrators, stylists, and videographers, and also works with 2 agencies on their broader branding and marketing initiatives. So Amy is going to be representing our in-house division of our panel today. And that is it for our panel. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Please welcome everybody to our lovely chat today. So I want to start by kind of talking about the differences between being full-time and being in-house, or being in an agency, or being a freelancer, all of that. I personally don't think there's a right or wrong thing. Everyone has their own career journey. And let me start with you, Amy. Since you are in-house and you are this in Baltimore, what are some of the pros that you find um, are really relevant in being in-house?
So yeah, I can speak to this from the perspective of being both in-house and freelance. I've never worked for an agency. And pros to working in-house, if you're with the right employer, you really get to dig into the brand of that employer. You will be instrumental in developing that brand. Even if you work alongside a partner agency, which at Visit Baltimore we do, you still get to do a lot of work that you might not necessarily get to do as a freelancer or working for an agency. And another advantage of it is that always be working with a client that you like and believe in. Hopefully you wouldn't work for anyone that you didn't like. And you have stability. You know that you're not going to lose this client and then get laid off.
That's awesome. And Nate, I know you also are not technically freelance, you're running your own business. So what is that perspective like on your end?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different variables in the difference between working in-house, full-time, or freelance. I actually started when I first started the company, I still freelanced for a little bit, and that was like my main thing. And what was really great about that from the standpoint of freelancing is you get into a lot of different experiences and you get to try new things. Where if you go and work in-house somewhere, you're kind of locked in with the specific brands, and unless you know exactly that's where you want to end up, a lot of people just need to have their goals outlined of like, I want to work for this type of brand because of what I believe and what they do, and the stuff of projects I get to work on. Freelance is a good thing to allow you to get the experience to kind of build up. But the thing for us, what attracts a lot of people to work at Rockshore is one, the stability, one, the support structure from having, management that like cares about and like looks at a person as an actual person. And that's why a lot of people, want to work with us, even on just the freelance side, but also in-house, we're able to invest into, our team to give them opportunities to grow. So just trying to like give them opportunities to learn new things and kind of, push time for that. That's my goal this year with the team. I presented to everyone in January is like, look, I don't want you guys to be having all your time billable hours. I need you to have a dedicated percentage of your time each year to actually be like learning hours that you're going out and learning new things. And that's some things that a lot of in-house people don't really care about that. But for us, it's like an investment into our own people so they grow. And if they don't grow, none of us grow.
Awesome. Thank you, Nate. Yeah, and I think, like as a couple of you mentioned already, it really you have to lay out what your goals are personally, right? It doesn't you going agency or going in-house, there's no better or worse way. It depends on who you are as a person. If you prefer to work kind of streamline on one thing, maybe in-house is better for you. That doesn't make you better or worse than anyone else. It's just a matter of how you work best. So Jordan, now I know you're a part of an agency. What are some of the benefits of working in an agency?
I think that's a great question. I'm also glad that I had two speakers to kind of think this through. But I've had some experience from both ends. So Fearless obviously is an agency, and we provide consulting and like delivery services primarily to like federal, state, and local government clients. But I've also worked in-house before Fearless. But what I would say is one of the things I think you'll find often in uh, agency settings is a lot of like innovation and like specialization, and that's because oftentimes like in-house teams, they don't have the budget or the mandate to specialize in things, and that's nothing's wrong with that. It's just how organizations tend to scale. And so if you're someone who is interested in really specializing in something, so for example, Fearless, a lot of times we'll work with partners on the government side who might be like communication specialists, but they're not focused on any one particular like discipline. They're like sort of like generalists. But we might staff a project with like content designers or visual designers or product designers. So people who have like very specialized focuses to augment those skills. And so if you're looking to like really go deep into something, I think agency work is a good place to go. Also innovation, just like if you know, oftentimes in-house teams bring in agencies because with the specialization and some of the just like the model, it allows you to try new things. And so if you're interested in using the most current technology or like cutting edge trends, things like that, I think agency environments often give you that freedom to explore. I would say just like one caveat there is like you got to meet people where they are, and so like you have to be prepared at like in any agency that like your customers might be looking for innovation, but they might not be ready for innovation. So that's like one of the challenges, but also like one of the joys.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I know Hillary, you're trying to get the best of both worlds as a recruiter. What do you find in your from your perspective are sort of the pros and maybe some cons for either or?
Well, great question. And really to kind of piggyback of what you noted earlier, it's more of a personal decision. I spend my time both working in-house, quote unquote, but I also run my own consulting firm. And as a people person, the consulting world for me is sort of a team of one, can be a bit lonely. And so, but I also love the flexibility and freedom that comes with it and the ability to choose my own work, especially being kind of underestimated, so to speak. You know, for me, I create certain rules of engagement of what I need an organization to have, whether I work with them or not. And I apply the same rules if I'm looking for a new job. And so it's really about how you prefer to work. And as a recruiter, you know, while I'm not the creative experts in the room today, what I look for, regardless of where I'm hiring, if I'm hiring for an agency or I'm hiring for a creative role in-house supporting one brand, I look for certain strengths in human design characteristics where an individual can thrive in that environment. And so what I would say is when you are about to start this journey, or as you are in this journey of job searching, take the time to sit with yourself, do that deep self-awareness work to say, hey, I actually prefer to work on my own, or I really want to be a part of a team and bounce ideas off of. I'm more of that case, but I'm also, boredom is my kryptonite. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything to see what I like. But it's okay to have an idea and try it and realize it's not what you want. Don't be afraid to change your mind. We're human, but there's no wrong answer. It's more around where you best work and how you best work, where you can thrive, not survive. Because let's be honest, we're still in a global pandemic. So we have to hold true to certain things for ourselves.
Yes, and I think that's so true. And you know, along the topic of thriving, no matter whether you're a freelancer or you're working in-house or you're working in an agency, you kind of have to brand yourself personally somehow, right? But you can't brand yourself successfully while you're burnt out and you're barely making it through. So I think, you know, just to reiterate everyone's point, it's really important to set sort of those goals for yourself. What do you value, not only in your professional career, but in your personal life, and how does that balance out with your career? So if you're someone that prefers, you know, to really spend time at home with your puppy and, you know, more family time, and you really value that personal time, kind of figuring out what that means for your career, so that you yourself as a person are happy and you're not, you know, in a role just to say you're in a role and have a certain title, right?
And I do believe that any experience is good experience for sure, especially if your goal is to really just learn and you're starting off. If you're just graduating, you're not supposed to have any idea of what you want to do. You think you do, but I promise you, I did not go to school for recruitment. Don't ask me how I got here. And so be flexible with yourself, be very gracious with yourself. But a tip that I do is I write down my rules of engagement. what my top kind of must-haves are and then nice to haves in a company. Because once you interview, I don't know about you, but sometimes I totally forget. And then I go into sort of sales mode. But then I'm like, wait a minute, they didn't check any of these boxes. And if there's one thing that I can say is that hiring and interviewing should always be a two-way process. Not every company is right for you, just like you're not going to be right for every company. And I promise you, rejection is redirection. So feel it, go with it, but keep moving, because as long as you stay true to your rules of engagement, you're going to find the right opportunity that you're looking for.
That's awesome. Yeah. And, to that point, I'm curious to hear everyone's sort of must-have list now and comparing it to what your must-have list was when you just graduated from school, if you went to school. I know for myself, when I graduated from college, I was like, I must be in an agency because that seems like the place to be, and like that seems like the marker for success in the design industry. And I must be able to do branding and print work and this and that. And then I realized as I got more experience, I'm like, I'm burning out. I don't even know how to live my life. I'm only 20 something and I don't even know what my hobbies are. So now my must haves are definitely, does my workplace respect my work life balance? Will they respect the boundaries that I set? And do they share the values that I have within my personal life? I currently work at a social impact PR and marketing agency, and they are 100% aligned with my personal values. And I'm so happy to be here, but it took me a lot of learning and negative experiences for me to really understand what I wanted in my life. So I'll start with you, Jordan. What were your must-haves when you just entered the industry, and what are your must-haves now?
I think when I first entered the industry, what I was really looking for was like experience, like as much experience as I could gain, like very quickly. And like I'm glad that I did that because it gave me a lot of different like perspectives that I like carry with me today. But now I would say like I think like you, I'm very focused on like mission. And so like, at Fearless, like we're working to like restore trust in government by delivering good design. And so like if I were, if I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry, Fearless folks who are watching this at home. But like, if I was looking for my next job, like I would want it to like stay within that space. And I think what's important to like enable that is like a thriving supportive culture. And so like Fearless, I've worked with, incredibly smart people at previous firms. I've never worked with like such nice and like culturally aligned folks as I have at Fearless. And so like, it's one thing to have a mission. It's another thing to have that like support to sustain it. So yeah, so those are some of the things that I would definitely look for.
Yeah, and before I jump to the next person, I want to just reiterate that you should not settle. You shouldn't feel like you have to put in the hours and stuff. I think that's the old school way of thinking, it's your rite of passage to work 80 hours a week, and that's just part of becoming a designer or a creative. That's no longer the mindset anymore. The mindset now is taking care of yourself, because you're not going to be able to succeed until you're like 100% happy with yourself. But
just real quick,
yeah,
just real quick on that.
sure.
One thing that I think is like so important related to that is like workplace culture should not be stagnant, or it shouldn't be stationary, right? And so like I think something that you can look for is how willing are people to change, like what type of influence can I have on this place, because like the workplace conditions on like the market that exists today will not be the case in a year. And so like I think it's important to know that like your contributions to a company, or your values have the potential to like shape the culture and things like that. So anyway, just real quick
Yes.
thought on that.
No, that was really great. Thank you, Jordan. Well, I'll move to you, Amy. What were your must-haves as a newbie in the industry, and now what are your must-haves today?
They're honestly, they're honestly pretty much the same. They really haven't changed. My must-haves as a new designer, a new creative, were that I could go to an organization that I believed in their mission, first of all, that I felt comfortable working with. So I worked for a labor union, and I believed in that mission. And even though it did not, so labor union design is pretty conservative. So even though it did not allow me to really stretch my creative wings, it did give me really good experience with production, with design, with doing something that was appropriate and not just in my style. I felt like that was really valuable, even though it was not the creative stretch that I wanted it to be. And when I came to visit Baltimore, like I said, my must-haves were the same. I wanted an employer that respected me, that respected ideas, that was willing to let us experiment, that you wouldn't be punished for something that didn't work out as though it were a failure, because I don't think anything is a failure. I think you take what you can learn from every project that you do. And also, it has not always been this way, but recently I really strive, and I know our organization really strives to offer us educational opportunities, and opportunities to do new things. And those are both must-haves too. So I guess I've changed a little bit, but really not that much through the course of my career. The same values are important to me that were when I was 23.
Awesome. And now I know, Nate, you have a very unique perspective because you started out on your own very early. So I guess what were your must-haves, and are they still the same today?
I think a lot of things that I've applied in Rockshore today were through all my experiences that frustrated me with freelance. There was just in production, it's a little bit more like involved than actually just putting together graphics or like designing something, because we're on location actually capturing content. We're not just in front of the computer designing things. So we're on location capturing stories, capturing commercials, content, and products. Safety is a huge part of it. And also is just, I've seen many times over the years that just other production companies are just more focused on just getting the project done and not really caring about the safety of the crew and just putting people in compromised like positions. And that has like flowed throughout just everything over the years. But the other thing is just that we have a huge transformation in our industry that's happening right now with just the work days. So in freelance, on the commercials, like I've been on jobs that are 18-hour days, and it's insane. Like it's just not healthy, and people are driving home and they have a gig the next day, and that's the whole thing. So I think from our standpoint of what we've experienced in freelance, and a lot of the people that have worked with us in-house have come from freelance who are frustrated about these big, streaming companies that really only care about their bottom line, not the people. And they'll force the producers on budgets that are like forcing a 16 to 18-hour day. And it's just not safe for that. So when we look at from the production standpoints, really my goals is like, if we go past 10 hours, it's a rarity. And we really keep our days to like 10 hours. And if we go past that, everyone gets compensated for that with overtime. But we make sure that, there's a turnaround for our crew the next day, so they have enough time to get home, actually take a shower, get some rest, eat dinner, and have breakfast the next morning and say hi to their family. So it's like a whole thing, like in our industry that's been transforming, that's still a problem to this day. But I'm grateful for our team who has all experienced that frustration. So when they're, I don't make the schedules anymore for shoots. But my producers, like, they will go out of their way to make sure that just doesn't happen. If the client asks for like, oh, we need to get this all done in one day, we got to change the creative or make it a 2-day, or, do something to not put our lives at risk. Cause, I had a job that we were supporting, and someone picked up, they were renting some equipment from us. They picked up our equipment at 5 a.m. in the morning at our studio, dropped it off at 11:30 that night. And that's a huge issue in our industry that still exists. And I'm hoping that there's change, and I'm grateful that we get to be part of that, to just try to be the change and actually not have those long days. But that's where I've seen a lot of the expectations are these just long days on set. When it's pre-production or post-production, those are just kind of regular hours, 9 to 5-ish or so. But on set, it can get brutal sometimes. So
Yeah, and it's great that you're very people first in this. And I mean, having worked with you personally, I know that people telling the stories of people is obviously a passion area, but carrying that through in your personal business practice is really important. So it's good to see that those values are kind of being implemented in everything that you're doing. Well, speaking of people first, Hillary, obviously you're very people oriented. You mentioned that you didn't go to school for recruitment and you didn't think you'd be in recruitment. So what was your idea of success when you got out of school, and what are sort of those must-haves now for you to be happy and successful in your own terms?
Yeah, so not to date myself too much, but when I graduated, it was like not the best economic time in America. So like the housing market, it was like not the best time, which has definitely turned me into the strong, resilient human being that I am today. But for me at the time, similar to you guys, it was like, I just want experience, any type of experience, but also was like, I need a job. I need money, student loans. I'm not trying to move home with my parents. I was just like, I am ready to be a full grown adult. And when you graduate school, there's all these like career fairs where you get like the insurance people. They're like, but I wound up getting introduced to like a recruitment company in that, and was more like, oh, I didn't know this existed. But that being said, when I graduated, I thought I had my whole life planned. I was like, I need experience here. Every job move that I made in my career, which don't be afraid to make career moves, at any time. The average tenure in a role right now is usually 18 months, but it's going down because candidates are taking more control of the process these days. So don't be afraid. If you start something, you're like, this is not what I signed up for. All I recommend is never run away from something, run towards something, because no place is perfect, but you don't want to run from another problem to another problem, which that's what helped me tweak my must-haves. That being said, when life gets in the way or a global pandemic and we have all of these plans, you realize very quickly that like you're really not in control. But what I will say, my idea of the experiences that I thought I needed, those environments were actually environments that weren't made for me. They weren't made for me to thrive. And unconsciously, I didn't know this, but I often was kind of the only person of color in the room, or, the kind of diversity checkbox, if you will. At the time, I didn't really care, because to me, that was giving me access to where I needed to be. But after a while of feeling that way, that's what sparked me to start my own firm, because I was very big on being more of a candidate advocate. And I never wanted to, I wanted to treat people how I wanted to be treated, because recruiters, let's be honest, we have the terrible rap. HR, no one likes HR. I don't even like HR. I don't. And I'm here. I've carved my own path to just have happy conversations like hiring. But I recently got interviewed because the subject matter was actually a client of mine. And I'm a people person consulting on my own. Pandemic, it's just me and my dog. I miss being a part of a team, but I was very nervous to go back in-house, even though it's an agency, but going back and working for someone. Because in my mind, I'm like, is that taking my power away? Am I giving it away again? I don't know. What is this? What am I doing? But I realized, wait a minute. I know how I want to feel. I know what I'm looking for in a company. They exceed my expectations. They even have my nice to haves. So there's really no reason to say no. And sometimes it's really just separating kind of those facts from those feelings and kind of going with your gut a bit. But all I will say is, having a plan or thinking what you're supposed to do, really, who said that? who told you you're supposed to? And that's the piece where it's like, wait a minute, I don't know. And then that is where the work starts to begin. Of what do you want? And I don't think as human beings, we ask ourselves that enough, but again, there's no wrong answer. And so I will say, like, I don't think anyone has planned the life that they have now. Maybe if you did, awesome. Tell me the secrets of hacking life like that. But, you know, I realized I was just really hard on myself. And at times I was coming from a place of desperation, at times of like, I need this because if I don't get this, and then I realized, like, who is telling me this? It's me. And sometimes, and interviewing is exhausting. You don't have to interview at 20 different places. You don't have to apply to 25,000 different roles, because as a recruiter, I can tell if you are, because when I talk to you and you didn't do your research and you seem to just be looking for any job, well, as a human being, I get it. But you have to protect your peace and where who you give your mind and your time to. So don't take every interview. Don't hit apply to something that if they call you back, you're not excited to hear from them. And that's the piece that I really, really recommend anyone in the job search, regardless. I assume you're looking for a new job and you're applying places. But I also assume that you have it organized enough to know who you're applying to, when, and you're doing the research and you're doing the work. Because when you put in the work, that work is recognized. But if you feel like a checkbox, you're going to get a checkbox. And that's the piece where it's like, don't feel the need. You have to take all of these calls because it shows up, whether you think it does or not. And that's the one thing that I would recommend just from a recruitment lens. Be prepared. Know where you're applying. Save every link. Excel. Just trust me, because we'll know. And recruiters only spend maybe 5 to 7 seconds looking at a resume. Portfolio is a little bit different. So this is where you only have one shot to make a first impression. And as a recruiter, we have very limited time to really go with our gut too. And for me, it's about, wait, do you care? Why do you want to work here? Because it's the same thing of, what can we do to make sure that you're set up for success? So that's my TED Talk for the day.
Yeah, that was awesome. Love it. Thank you. Yeah, I think a really big takeaway from what you just said is embracing the change and seeing everything, going back to what you said earlier, rejection is just redirection. It's not, end all, like, my life is over. It's okay, that was an opportunity for me to recognize, something's not aligning here. All right, let me shift my attention to something else. And I think, especially with the great resignation and all of that now, there's a new wave of, not settling and, finding what is aligning for yourself.
And it's okay to say no.
Yeah, it's okay to say no.
My 3 things are being seen, heard, valued. The value piece is really key. They could check every box, and when that offer comes, if it's insulting, take it as it's insulting. And it's okay to say no and negotiate, because these are things that are a part, again, of like the rules. And so it's okay to say no on both ends.
Yeah, so I think this is really valuable for someone that's already in the field of work, right? But what about someone that's just coming out of school, nothing on their resume? How, and I'll open this to anybody, what advice can you give to someone that is, riddled with imposter syndrome, but they know they want to stand up for their values, but they don't quite feel validated in that quite yet, like, and they're thinking to themselves, am I even, like, should I even, like, stick by, this salary minimum? Like, I'm literally just 21, like, and I have nothing on my resume. How do I make myself, like, hot shit, basically? Like, how am I cream of the crop? How am I gonna be the one to stand out when I'm clearly very green? And I'll open that up to anyone.
Yeah. I'll take the HR recommendation, then you guys go from the creative lens. But real quick, there's no such thing as coming out of school without any experience. How you operate in school is how I define how you're going to be successful. I don't expect you to have all this experience because that literally doesn't make any sense. This is an entry-level role. If you see an entry-level role requiring 3 years of experience, that's not where you need to be. So that's first and foremost. But internships, passion projects, experimenting, create your own portfolio, create your own resume. If you work while you're in school, even if it's like at Starbucks, because you know that shows to me that you're able to work hard. And so it's really more character building. So every role, whether it's entry level or not, there's a market rate based on where you live, the work that you do. And it's a quick Google. There's so many things that are out there, even Twitter. Hey guys, what are you getting paid? Just ask people what they make, because for some reason we're afraid to share that. And how can we make sure we're all being paid fairly and equally if we don't, and it's super secret? HR creates it super secret sometimes, but I'm like, no, let's share. But there's no expectation of actual work on a resume as an entry-level person. It's about you. It's one document where you're marketing yourself, and that's highlighting your strengths, your passions, what fills your cup up. What are you really good at naturally? And then what do you want to learn? Those are the narratives that we're looking for, as opposed to checking all of these boxes. Because if someone is looking for that, then they're not looking for an entry-level person.
I can speak to this a little bit too. Oh, I'm sorry, Jordan.
Oh no, please go ahead.
So my first design job was actually with a small publishing company that made magazines, recruiting magazines for truck drivers. So I was a graphic designer on a magazine called Women in Trucking. And these were not consumer magazines. They were not for sale. They were given away for free at truck stops. And yes, they had editorial content, but the editorial content really supported all the recruiting ads that were really the real value of the publication. There were a lot of things about that job that I was not thrilled about, but I took it anyway because there were things, even though on the surface it seems like, oh, that's not a great job. There were things I was excited about. I had a lot of autonomy there because I was the only designer. The publisher really didn't care what the magazines looked like. So I was allowed to experiment and do pretty much whatever I wanted within certain parameters, like I couldn't make it look like Bon Appetit or anything like that. And I gained a lot of experience there. And even though it was on the surface, not a great job, even though it was low paying, I went from waiting tables to that and took a huge pay cut. But it is what allowed me to get my next job. I think you also need to understand that the clips that you have, people are going to view them, hiring people are going to view them in context. And they're going to want to know what you learned from that job more than just the output that you created there, right? So when you get an opportunity that is not, don't think about where you want to be 15 years down the road. Think about what the opportunity is now and what you can take from it, because there are things of value in a lot of jobs that may not at first appear to be what you want. I didn't want to work for basically a classified, publications publisher for the rest of my life. I worked there for 6 months and it sent me on a trajectory that I never would have predicted, but it turned out to be great.
Just hop in real quick. Amy, first of all, I would watch a TED Talk about like the trucking magazine industry. But here's something I would just like to acknowledge. First is like I think there's like a lot of truth in like just the effects of imposter syndrome, but also like how common it is. And like one thing I would just say to like folks who are watching is like if you're a designer, whether you're just starting out or if you've been in the industry for like 20 years, imposter syndrome is something that you'll have to contend with. And so like I'm the lead designer at a mid-sized tech company with 30 plus designers. And there isn't a day that goes by where I'm not like, oh, do I really know, like when I'm going into a meeting, do I know what I'm talking about? Am I offering value? Things like that. And so that's just real. And it's important to like recognize that and to confront it and just be kind to yourself. And to remind yourself that you're not an imposter. But here's one thing I would just say: if when you're thinking about like applying and how those effects sort of manifest themselves, one of the best pieces of advice that I was ever given was from a friend of mine who actually works at Fearless, named Kelsey Johnston, and her work on the National Museum of African American History and Culture was just like nominated for a Webby Award. So she's super experienced, like really knows what she was like, really knows like her stuff. And once she told me that like, Jordan, if you're like 80% qualified, you're probably 100% qualified. And that's because like if you're applying or for like a new job or like looking for a promotion or anything like that, I think oftentimes we tend to like undervalue our capabilities. And what I do as I'm like looking at candidates is like if I'm looking at a resume or a portfolio and like 80% of the things that I'm looking for are demonstrated, I know that like that 20% is like the room for growth. And so like everyone's improving, everyone's growing. And so like that's just kind of a natural state. And I think a lot of employers like keep that in mind. It's very rare to find someone who's like 100% qualified for a job like on day one. So anyway, just I would say be kind to yourself, and recognize the imposter syndrome when it comes out.
So I have one thing to actually add about just like college experience and taking on all the opportunities. I I witnessed so many times, like, and I don't think anyone that's actually my class is on this call, but I witnessed so many times during my whole time at Stevenson, always taking things like seriously, and they weren't actually going out and trying new things. They were just kind of going through the flow of just like, I'm going to get the degree and the degree is going to get me my job. And I think that's a big like thing that's happening that's been kind of taught is like get a degree and you'll get a job. But it's like really like I'm not looking for degrees. I'm looking for experience when I'm hiring someone. And I'm also looking at how they maximize their opportunities that were given to them. And for me, when I was at Stevenson, I pushed like so many different boundaries, and I like was trying to like, what can I try? What can I do? What opportunities do we have at the university? And from that, of those things, I look back. So like you look back at your kind of career and all the different connections that you have, and like literally 70% of all my connections really are connected back to my roots of like what I did, and at those things that I wasn't really sure if I really wanted to hop into when I was in college. And I'm so grateful I did that, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't actually spend that time and connect with those people, because I showed that I was interested. They're like, cool, awesome. Someone's interested to do this. Let's try something new. We like pushed the momentum forward with what we were doing. And that really is applied to just the growth of just my company. And it's okay. Like, I always, for me, if I want to do something, I just go do it. Like, just do it. Like, I don't want to like drop a Nike ad in here, but you just got to do it. You don't want to look back in life and realize like, oh, I wish I applied for that job or this or that. That's a big thing, because if you're looking to just get experience, I mean, it's really, there's so many things that you can lead off to. And the thing is, you're 21 and you're going in and actually applying for that job. You don't have to be there for the rest of your life. It's a stepping stone into the rest of your career. So I think you recognize that. And if it ends up being like an opportunity that you can be there for a lot longer, it's awesome. You found what you're really looking for, but don't feel the pressure of like, I have to be there forever. This has to be that one job type of thing. That's just kind of my thoughts, but just like seize those opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities like still hidden inside of universities. And if you show that you want to, learn more and you have that growth, you will succeed.
Yes, thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts. And I'll share a couple things about my personal experience. I started my photography business when I was 14. So imposter syndrome was like up in lights for me. Like every single day I'm like trying to convince people that were like 30 years old getting married to hire me as their wedding photographer. And what Nate said is very true. You just got to do it. Like, don't allow yourself to be crippled with fear. I think the term "fake it till you make it" is very applicable here. Just kind of fake it and keep faking it and keep faking it until you kind of realize, oh wait, I'm not really faking it anymore. Like I kind of got this. So I think just keep welcoming those opportunities to push the boundaries for yourself. If you see something, whether it's a school project or even a client project, where you see a possibility to push it a little more, bring it to the table and say, hey, instead of a brochure or instead of a one-on-one video, maybe we should do a full-on like social media campaign where we do this and that and really push the boundaries because you never know what kind of opportunities will come out of that. So I see Hillary is typing an answer right now, but we have a question from the audience from Kayla, and I'll open it to anyone. What advice do you have for someone with experience in a completely different field? What should I say when I'm asked about it in an interview? So I guess how do you? Yeah, go ahead. Like how do you translate that? Yeah.
So I kind of put this question under the category of making a career shift. And this happens a lot. Let's say you're working in customer experience and you want to become an engineer and then you invest in classes. These are what I call these are called non-traditional backgrounds with transferable skills. Don't talk about the what and the why, how you spent your day to day, what skills you've honed in on that transfers into the role that you're applying for, and talk about the why you want to make that transfer. It does, and how your experience can be leveraged in that new role. I prefer to hire folks with more of I call it a generalist background, which means you can operate in ambiguity, because that's pretty much how we are these days. And I do a lot of work with startups. And so for me, what are the tangible skills that you have? Now, if it's a more specialized role, then yeah, you might have to have, certain certifications or a certain maybe course you can take to get certified, but don't focus on the past. Be always forward thinking and go into the why, which leads more into, I always ask, what is important to you when assessing a new opportunity and what is motivating you? That's how you can approach those answers. And you're just redirecting, because it's not a trick. We're not trying to, bamboozle anyone, but you applied for a reason. You have this desire. So keep the focus on that and talk about what you've learned and what you have gained and how that can be leveraged in the new role.
I love that, and I'll give just a quick example from my experience. So one of the projects that we're working on at Fearless is with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So, like, just long story short, like we're helping them to operationalize human-centered design within their IT department. And when we were hiring for that team initially, one of the candidates that I reviewed was not a UX designer or a product designer or a user researcher. They were a therapist, and they worked in a clinical setting. And they had done a little bit of freelance work with like branding and marketing and things like that. So they had a great portfolio, but they didn't have that like the type of professional experience and tenure that you might find from another candidate. And so, like when I reviewed the portfolio and through the interview process, like what I really focused on was like Hillary mentioned, the why. Why do you interview patients, or how do you have a productive conversation that gets to like the root of the problem? How do you work with stakeholders, things like that? Because what I think you'll find is that there are a lot of like transferable skills, like Hillary mentioned, and so but like getting down to that why I think is the ability to show like the potential that you have, even if you don't have the direct experience. Like, yeah, I kind of get the base, like the basics of it. The rest will come with time.
Yeah, and I would say too, if you see a job posting where you don't quite have the qualifications that are lined up, but you can see sort of that transferable skill in your mind, apply. And you know, the worst thing they can say is no or not respond. You know, nothing's gonna happen to you. And if it's a company or a job that you're really passionate about and you can see yourself working in, don't hold yourself back just because you don't technically have 10 years of experience in Adobe InDesign or whatever it is. You know, if you think you can do it, apply for it.
A quick stat for anyone in the room, just as women or identify as maybe underestimated, we will apply to a role usually where we meet 90 to 100% of the requirements. Folks from more dominated groups, 10 to 20%. My rule of thumb is if you can hit it like 40%, have at it. Because at this point, what's the worst that can happen? They say no, but you can't get the no unless you try. Be comfortable with the no, because the no's go both ways. And for the question around how often should you review your rules of engagement, if you have a conversation and you feel weird afterwards, go back and read that and see the why it might have felt that way. But normally they don't really change too much. Maybe they might get a little more specific, but usually those don't change too much.
Awesome. So I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit to sort of be a little bit more external facing. So according to Zippia.com, as of 2021, about 85% of all jobs are filled through networking and personal connections. So what is the best way to, in your own experience, to make genuine professional connections? And I'll start with you, Nate.
Yeah, so, you know, really, as far as I would say, pretty much everyone that's on our team was really connected with one person who's connected to another person in like my network. Yeah, we haven't really had that many actual like, you know, we've had a few like actual like job openings that are posted in the whole application process, but we've basically brought a lot of people that are freelance and then brought them in and offered them like a full-time job type of thing. But with that, you know, I think really being like out there and being like, it comes down to your kind of own like personal brand, I think, and just being engaged in like social, I think is key. Like I see a lot of people that are like most successful in their growth and stuff, just like have a voice like outside of just like online or even at events. When more events were like in person, I would see that person at another event. It's like, hey, I just saw you. And it's just those like connections that are key. You know, I think, you know, really just, you know, staying engaged with people and just like being there to just, you might have a conversation, it might not align or like reach a goal that you're looking for at current time, but eventually that actually is like, hey, you know, we, you know, work together. I've had a scenario that someone I talked to 10 years ago when I first started a company, I was at an airport flying back from a job, and I ran into him and he was like my first client. And, you know, it was awesome reconnecting with him, and he got us in the door with many different clients. But just when you just being human and just talking with people and having those conversations, people are going to remember that. And he's like, I remember when you guys helped us with that project, you know, it really helped, you know, we're so grateful for that. It's so great to see you. And then from there, it's just like, those good interactions just like come with referrals and recommendations. And then whether it's getting work or getting hired, you know, for another company, I think people want to hire people that they know and are like aware of. You know, sometimes the team someone will email somebody on my team like, hey, do you have this, like, you know, here's my portfolio, do you have anything like work for me? And the first question I asked, like, you know, does anyone know this person? Like, have we worked with them at all, like in this town or anything? Just like see if we know a connection. I think we automatically all go to like, who do we know type of thing. So I feel like, and we in Baltimore, we have a little bit of that nice like Smaltimore thing. It's like, oh, I know you, you know, it's that type of thing. But I just say, like, always be in conversation, always be there to support others, even if it's not beneficial to you at that time. I think it's going to be like, I think that's always just been like the key, is just like be there to kind of support each other, even though it might not be the moment, it just help people.
Yeah, and to your point, I think the key thing here is genuine connections, right? Like really good personal connections that you share values with someone, not just cold messaging on LinkedIn. Oh my God, I hate it so much. I get like 10 of those a day where they're like, hey, are you looking for so and so? I'm like, I don't know
I
who
just
you
got
are.
5 of them. I just got 5 of them right now on LinkedIn in the last hour.
Yeah, like no, thank you. Then those never really work. And I'm sure, Hillary, as a recruiter, you get a bad rap because so many recruiters do that. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
finding
but there's an art to it.
there is an art, that is true. But yeah, finding those opportunities, even if it may be out of your way, you don't see the immediate benefit to it. Joining organizations like AIGA, plug, or going to like networking events, or not even networking events, like dog walking groups, like anything. You never know who you're gonna meet.
Follow people
Find
on Twitter too. Like follow
Yeah,
people on social and engage. It's like a
yeah,
whole community where I find people are way more supportive on Twitter than they are on LinkedIn, truthfully.
yeah. Yes, very true. Yeah, I think the key too is connect with people that connect with the people that you share personal commonalities and values with, not with the sole purpose of I'm only going to connect to this person for potential business opportunity. Connect with them because they're also the fan of the Ravens, or they also like puppies. Like you never know where that connection is going to lead. Um, just to kind of keep in my time in mind, I'm gonna shift to the attention to some of the questions we have. So from Laurice, do you have any advice for someone who is coming out of a period of unemployment or a sparse body work experience? How do you present yourself as a candidate with value in a competitive field? So someone with a gap on their resume, how do you remedy that, and what would be a good way to explain that? And I'll open that to anybody.
You don't have to explain a gap in your resume during a global pandemic, period. If anyone asks why you left, it didn't survive the pandemic. It does not matter. And if anyone has the audacity to ask that, then they literally have not been paying attention, because industries across the board have been impacted. And that is okay. Or it really doesn't matter if someone's explaining it. And that is a key. Do I want to work somewhere where they're literally going to question that?
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal opinion. I don't bother asking. My question is, how'd you come across this opportunity and what motivated you to apply? And sometimes you can redirect the conversation to save someone from themselves for asking something like that, but don't feel the need to explain.
Yeah, and if you do feel the need, it's okay to be your authentic self. And let's say you took a 2-year gap to really figure out what you wanted in your life. If you're gonna go for a company that values people, you can explain that to them and say, like, I wanted to spend some time to really focus on myself again and really hone in on what skills and things I wanted to accomplish in my life. And I realized, that next step is within your company. You guys embody a lot of the values that I want to achieve in my next stage of my life, and blah blah blah. So like Hillary said, you don't have to explain, but if you feel the need to, be authentic. Don't feel like you have to, beat around the bush and provide some like politically correct answer that is like acceptable to old school people. Just be authentic and be true to yourself. Um, I'm going to move on to the next question from Linnea. My cover letters have gotten good feedback, but I feel like they're just repeats of my resume. How can I make my cover letters stand out and go beyond just repeating every time on my resume? And I'll jump in here. I don't know that cover letters are very, it's like in the creative industry anyway, I don't know that they're very popular anymore, but I know some companies still require them. So maybe Amy or Jordan, do you guys have any insight on how they can stand out, whether it's a cover letter or just in general? How can they stand out as a candidate?
I don't know who wants to go first.
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I agree that I don't really put a lot of stock in cover letters. But in general, in order to avoid it just being a repeat of your resume, like I would say to kind of, this might sound like cliched advice, but make it more personal. Go deeper into what you've learned at your jobs rather than just a bulleted list of what you did at each one, and how it would apply to the position that you're applying for. And also, I think just showing a little bit more of yourself in your cover letter is good, because it just allows the person who's reading it to kind of get to understand you and know you better than just your job experience, right?
I think that's great advice. I would also say that like each of these things, like whether it's like a cover letter or a resume or portfolio, it's just like one data point. And so like, I never like put too much stock on any one thing. It's how they all sort of come together to tell a story. But I might think about like, as I'm looking at a cover letter or a resume or a portfolio, I'm looking at how the candidate is communicating through them. And so like through portfolio, more than like the output, more than like, here are all the mock-ups that I designed, or like here are all the logos that I'm responsible for. Like I really want to look for like the outcomes. Same thing with like the resume. I want to understand like what does someone know, like what are their skills, more so than like what was their title. And then on the cover letter, like that's a really good opportunity to explain like your why. Like you can think about it as like a direct communication with someone in a way that like a resume and a portfolio can't do. And it's an opportunity to have a little bit of a heart to heart with someone who is reviewing whether or not like you're a cultural fit, or whether or not like you share values or like are mission driven. That's an opportunity to like explain some of those things, but in context, each one of these things is just part of the bigger puzzle.
Just
Yeah,
make sure you're addressing it to the right people too, or just like don't bother. I don't read cover letters. I truly don't, but I have rejected resumes that have incorrect cover letters. So when in doubt, just like stick with what you know.
yeah. I feel sometimes with design and with, in the creative industry, I feel like a lot of times I'm a designer, I'm gonna try to make my resume like show that I'm a designer, sometimes takes away from actually the actual story and where I'm actually more looking at physical elements. I believe personally that it should have it. I mean, it should look nice and it should be looking professional, your cover letter, but your portfolio is where you need to show off your work, not your like actual resume of visual design. Where, I made a mistake when I first started that I had this cool designs like thing. I had like little swatches of like my percentile of how I felt I was in my skills. It doesn't matter. Just like put your experience and then that cover letter, show how it applies and how you like who you are as a person, So it's like your story, kind of introing that, then your experience, and then here's the work I have to really show and really segue that, and combine those pieces. And I've had resumes that have been like full out like tie-dye backgrounds, and you can't even print them out, and just dark backgrounds and this and that. I'm like, well, and they weren't actually like even design people, but it popped out to me, but it also was I can't read it. It's not eligible. I can't print this out. I'm going to have to go through 9 ink cartridges to try to print this out to review it with the team type of thing. So it's just like those type of things to kind of look out for that I've just seen over the years of it cracks me up. I have a folder that I save those of the ones that kind of laugh at. So there's just what not to do. But yeah.
Ink cartridges are expensive, so main key point here: don't have full color backgrounds. But also, as a side note, and Hillary, you can speak to this too, I'm sure, having as creative people, I'm sure a lot of us feel obligated to have a very nice, well-designed PDF resume. Have a Word document version as well, and make sure that everything is organized and formatted properly, because when you're uploading a resume to one of those like automated like job posting boards, they're not always going to read the PDF correctly, and you might miss out on a job because you had like really fancy words or literature somewhere, and like they couldn't decipher what you were trying to say. So even though it hurts our soul, I'm sure, have a Word document.
I think there's a happy medium, because if I am interviewing for a more creative role and I have a very bland resume, I'm sort of like, it's not really adding up. However,
Yep.
applicant tracking systems are the bane of everyone's existence. And so there is that like automatic scraping that sometimes works and doesn't for portfolios, just to ensure that, again, whoever is reviewing your background can review all of the data points. Even if there is a little bit of a technical snafu, I personally find that personal websites really do the trick, and kind of controlling the narrative that way, because also then you're not creating a whole bunch of stuff each time you're applying. It's all about working smarter, not harder. And it's like you have your resume that has part of your story, but then have your website portfolio right there, or whatever it is, because that just allows you to say, hey, do you want it more, or you want to visually see what I can do? Check this out. And then from there, that way, when they call you, it's a more informed conversation at that point.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, we got a lot of questions, so I'm gonna breeze through these. From Stephanie, do you all know how to make a proper portfolio? I was thinking that I could use a PowerPoint software for my portfolio, that I can use a flash drive to carry it. They're going to the event next week. I'll start off here by saying, present it in a way that's efficient, effective, and clean. It doesn't matter whether it's on a laptop, an iPad, in print, on a USB drive. Be, concise, but be comprehensive. Don't like, what I hate is when someone comes into the room and they have their laptop, they're like, oh, can I have your Wi-Fi password? I need to pull up my website, or anything like that. Have something ready to go. It helps you just get to the point faster, and it shows you as a prepared candidate. But Jordan and Amy, I don't know if you want to chime in here as well.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I think something to think about that, like, I wish I had considered when I was first starting out is like, what is the cost of your portfolio, like in terms of your time, or like, if you're like using like a web portfolio, like for hosting costs and things like that, and like how easy will it be to like update over time? Because like if you're using your portfolio to like represent your experience and like the outcomes of your work, like those will change over time, and you might want to showcase different things depending on the job. And so like I would just sort of keep that in mind, is like, how easy is this to update? And so that might be a presentation, that might be a PowerPoint presentation, or it might be a website. So whatever works for you, I would start there.
Yeah, in general, I prefer for portfolios or any kind of presentation, like I get a lot of presentations from our agency partners, things like that. My personal preference is a PDF. So even if you design it in PowerPoint, save it as a PDF. That way, it's going to look the same on every screen. It's not going to have any kind of glitches. You're not going to run into any technical issues. It's just easier for everyone that you're giving your portfolio to access. Make it as easy as possible, as idiot proof as possible, as seamless as possible.
Yeah. And if you're a multimedia designer and you have like animated stuff and videos and stuff, don't have a print portfolio. Or if you do have print pieces, have a digital, complement to it as well, so that interviewers can experience it live if you're in person. Because I think for me, you're missing out on an opportunity to share your full capabilities if you're just sharing like a video still of your work, because it doesn't represent you accurately. All right. Oh, go ahead, Jordan.
Just
Sorry.
real quick, I'm not sure if we're gonna get another portfolio, and I feel like this is like a burning idea that I came into this panel discussion with, is like, just for some expectations, like as someone who is involved in the hiring process and like assesses trial projects and portfolios and things like that, it is very likely that the person assessing them will not spend more than like 5 minutes reviewing them. And so like I think that's something to keep in mind. Like Hillary was saying, it's like a PDF is like super fast to open and to skim and things like that. And it's not like an insult to your work. It's just like if you know what you're looking for and like the markers of like quality for your agency, it's pretty easy to like see that. And so like I would spend the most time on like making it like everyone's been saying, like making it really easy to like skim and open up and things like that, but also to understand like the outcomes. Like, you can see, uh, you know, like dozens of like really interesting and innovative work, but like if it didn't produce like positive results, then it's not that important. So like making that as like quick as possible to like skim, I think is like pretty key.
One
Yeah,
thing,
I will say that the moment it becomes difficult, it's very quickly to move on. And so worry less about getting all the pieces at once, because the goal is to get an interview. The goal is to just have, enough data points to get a phone call. And that's where you're then able to control the narrative. So again, and make sure, when you're looking at your resume, make sure it's sort of tailored to the jobs that you're applying for. Steal some of the job posting language. I mean, we're making it up anyway, let's be honest. And so this is where it's like, just make our lives a bit easier in terms of articulating what it is that you can do. And if you write it on there and you can't do it, trust me, we'll find out. And so this is where it's like, don't overcomplicate it, because remember, when you're applying, the only goal is to get a call back. You're not going to get hired just off your application. It's never going to happen. And so these are just like a tiny data point of like, was your resume easy to read? And visually, did it not give me heartburn? Awesome. Let's talk. And so it's a lot though, going into it, not knowing all of it, but you have to and most hiring managers, hiring is not a part of it's a part of their job, but not the main part of their job, because they have their regular jobs. As recruiters, again, it's about, we have 5 to 7 seconds and I'm scanning. So just make sure it's easy to understand. That's really all it is.
yeah, one thing to add about just the multimedia aspect of it, just because, I'm in video. So I get so many times people will send over like, here's my reel, but it's password protected. I got to look back and forth. Like I pull up my phone and I can't just if you're going to send me a link to something, like have it unlisted if you can't share it publicly or something like that. For like our industry, I would rather just have a website that just has everything laid out and just very simple. And then, it's always great is just even if it's a little like inside the website, when you click on the video, whether it's like a light box and has some information about like what you were a part of it, I think there's that, because what happens in our field is like video is like, we're like 10 to 20 people putting together one video. So there's a lot of different roles. So let us know what you actually did in that project, because I know it just wasn't one person who made it type of thing. So let me know if you actually did the graphic design for the animated elements, or let me know if you did the animation or you edited or did the sound score, those type of things. Let us know. My preference in our industry is really an actual web page, single link to outline that's not password protected. It's easy access and mobile optimized, because I will look at everything on my phone because I'm always out and about. So I want to be able to access it quick. So that's my note for portfolios and the video side of things.
Awesome. All right, we got a lot of questions. I'm going to go through them. Someone asked, if you're hoping for a response from a job opportunity by a certain date and they have missed that deadline, how can you reach out in a polite way to see what the delay is, and how can you continue the hiring process?
If there's an application deadline that's listed, what I would do is see if you can contact or find like an HR or recruiter for that company, and then just say, hey, it could be a LinkedIn post, a LinkedIn message for sure, but just saying, hey, well, actually, first off, if you still see it posted, apply. One, because if there's a deadline, chances are that posting should be taken down. But if you want to ask, just in case you're not wasting time, I would try to find a recruiter or HR person and say, hey, and reference the job, send the link, make it very easy, because I get messages, what are you hiring for? What do you do? Who are you? What am I supposed to know? So again, making it easy and just saying, hey, just wanted to confirm that it's still open before I hit apply, or just say I apply, but I know I missed the deadline. Just wanted to flag my background in case, because we'll have deadlines all the time, but maybe not have enough candidates that we need. So again, if it's posted, assume it's open. That's always sort of my rule of thumb. And there was a note about writing like design tests or challenges. That is becoming more of the norm, because what it is giving it another data point to create more access and opportunity for those who maybe didn't have the traditional background. I agree, there's certain things that you should not ask someone to do unless you're going to compensate them. So there are companies that will provide stipends and whatnot. If it's too much for you and you don't want to do it and you have other interviews that aren't requiring that, you can say no. But design challenges, especially if they could use something that you create, those are usually now compensated. But again, you don't have to go through that process if you feel like they're asking for a lot and not rewarding you or incentivizing you. That to me is a value question, and do they meet your rules of engagement? But know that it's not a way to trick anybody. Usually it's a way to create more of an even playing field, especially for those with more non-traditional backgrounds.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Hillary. From Camilla, sorry if I'm not saying that correctly. She says, hello, can you share advice for university students who are seeking mentorships but are unsure of how to persuade professionals they have not met before? Opening that to anyone.
It's like dating, shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Shoot your
Worst
shot.
they can say is no.
Literally, exactly. The worst thing they can say is no, but truthfully, it's all about the ask. If you take the time to say, hey, this is who I am, this is why you caught my eye. Twitter is also great too. Most of the time it's bandwidth, but I know, and also look for sponsors versus mentors, because that way, you know, there's more actionable things, and it's really, and be clear on what the ask is, and if it's like, hey, do you mind just looking at my portfolio real quick? Or do you mind just 15 minutes? I'd love to treat you for coffee. Be clear on the ask, because when it's unclear, you're usually not going to get a response. But if you're asking for something really small and you catch someone on a good day and they're feeling generous, that could be it. So honestly, shoot your shot, but be clear on what you're asking, because most of the time everyone's like, I'm so busy, I don't have time. Da, 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 da. But if you're not asking for much, that can really start that can start the relationship.
I can speak to that from my experience of actually how I got started. I actually got started doing this. I got connected with someone. I was like, man, I want to do what he's doing. You know, I actually, my mother, she was an artist. My aunt's a graphic designer, and I was in graphic design, and I moved to more motion animation, but I wanted to be on the field of, like, I was moving into kind of motion actual capture. And there was somebody that was doing a project at my dad's company. And I just asked, I said, look, you know, you don't have to pay me. I just want to come out and learn. And if I can take away from something, and if I can help you with your day, like, I think it'd be beneficial for both of us. And that started, you know, my career. You know, that moment of just that ask, I set the expectation. I was like, here's what I'm going to do. And just didn't really pester about it. Just was like, hey, like, just be human about it. Just ask, you know. And I think that's what I always look for. You know, I have so many people reach out, you know, on a daily basis for like internships and this and that. And I'm like trying to create a new kind of a funnel of like a mentorship program, because I knew how much it meant for me to have somebody actually just like sit down and just like talk, you know. So, you know, having that moment just to ask those questions and just be like real about it, you know, it's key. And that's where I've seen a lot of people that in our industry, and I've seen it myself, and I can say that it's worked. So just be real and just ask.
I think that's great advice. I would also add to that you know, like, everyone needs help. And I think this is important to keep in mind if you're thinking about like growing your network, or like finding a mentor. And like something that I have felt throughout my career when I've like been expanding my network, or like, you know, identifying a mentor, is like, oh, why would this person ever want to work with me? Like, what do I have to offer? You know, or like, why would they want to spend their time? Like, why would they want to volunteer their time to help me? But the truth is, like, everybody needs help. And so like I would look for like opportunities for like collaboration and shared projects, because like your mentor might have some side hustle going on and they're looking for an extra set of hands or someone to bounce ideas off of. And you might not have the full experience to be able to do it at the level that they expect. And that's where mentorship comes into play. And so like that relationship and the bond of like working on a shared goal is important for like building trust, but also it's a good opportunity for someone to like practice their skills of like coaching up folks who are looking for experience, and your skills of like sort of growing in the project. So I would look for ways to like offer help and to try to understand like the value that you can offer in the relationship.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. All right, well, moving on to Kim's question. What tips do you have for someone who may be interviewing jobs for the first time or for the first time in a long time?
Don't forget to ask questions of your own. Always ask
Yeah.
questions. And it could be, hey, can you describe how you guys as a team communicate? What are your preferred methods? How do you guys, acknowledge each other? Ask culture questions, describe the culture in this remote hybrid. Always ask a question. Don't feel the need to over prepare either, because you are being interviewed on yourself. You are the subject matter expert in yourself. So really just hone on, your pitch, your narrative, your elevator pitch, if you will, your strengths. But to prepare, do your research on the company.
But also don't recite like everything the company is about back to the people too, because they know who they are, but you're not being interviewed for how well you know them. You're being interviewed, like Hillary said, how well the fit you are for them, and vice versa as well. All right, I'm just gonna keep going through. Sorry, Amy, go ahead.
And I was going to say also approach it from the perspective of, it's not just them interviewing you, right? You're also there to find out if this job is a good fit for you, not just for them to find out if you're a good fit, right?
Yes. All right, we have Mindy. Some of my applications require a phone number. I'm deaf and personally prefer email to be easily reached out. How do I inform the company I apply for to know that that's the best way to reach me? And I'll speak as someone who's actually hard of hearing and I wear hearing aids. I prefer video so that I can read lips. I'm not completely deaf, but it helps for me just because you got to be inclusive and have those capabilities. So whenever I was applying for a job, I would always note in an email. I always try to have an email, a personal email, once I send in an application as well. I'd say how excited I am for an opportunity. And if they reach out for an interview, say that I prefer to on a video call to read lips, just to let them know that that's something I need. And if that's something that they can't accommodate, or they don't find the need to accommodate, then I have my answer. I don't want to be a part of that company.
Most should absolutely. Usually they'll offer some sort of direct contact information too, or if you need kind of alternative arrangements, you can email them directly and then they would set it up. But if you don't see it on there, that disclaimer, then that's where, usually in the application process, there maybe is like any additional comments, anything you want to say, you can use that, or just wait until you hear a call, wait until you get an email to schedule. And then that way you can make those recommendations there too.
Real quick, just this applies to both like permanent and temporary disability, and so like you may be blind, and there are barriers of access that can be created by the interview process, and like it's totally reasonable to advocate for yourself and your needs, but also like it's the pandemic and people are working from home with kids, and so there might even be some considerations that you need to ask for in that regard, to like have an effective and productive interview. And so, I think all of those things are completely reasonable, and you should feel comfortable asking for those accommodations.
Great, we got one question from Matthew. What do you think is the ideal number of pieces to have in a portfolio?
I honestly, I don't really have an ideal. I mean, I would say 3 to 5, but what's more important to me in reviewing your portfolio is that you can answer questions about your process for each project, that you can go really in depth. I want to know, what was the problem that you were asked to solve? How did you get to the solution? What research did you do? Who did you collaborate with? What was your inspiration? How did the project evolve from the start to the finish? I like to see sketches, process sketches. I want to know everything that went into your completion of this. And to me, it's more important that you could speak in that way about 3 pieces than to just have a dozen pieces that are just beautiful to look at, but you don't have anything of substance to say about them.
All right, thank you. And Mindy had a follow-up saying, I don't read lips at all. I have different preference in communication. Every deaf and hard of hearing person has their own preferences in communication. And yes, that's completely 100% true. It's just a matter of communicating what your personal needs are. Obviously, my needs are different than yours. So just making sure that you're being very clear in what accommodations are necessary to complete the interview successfully. And I'm gonna close us out on one final question. And I want everyone to answer if you're comfortable. Can you remember a candidate that you interviewed that was really unique and memorable and that stood out to you, and were they hired?
That's a loaded question for me. I mean, yes, I hire anyone that stands out. Sometimes though, I might not hire them for the role that they applied for, but I'm like, you were something. And if you were, and I love working in startups and really fast growing organizations, because so many times we'll create roles around people. So just because you don't see a job that's posted doesn't mean that there couldn't be an opportunity that even better matches what you think. And, you know, I can't claim that every recruiter is going to be like that. You know, some are a bit more transactional, but yeah, I mean, it really depends on the scenario and what makes it stand out. But for me, I know what the must-haves are versus nice to haves from a needs base. So that's where I think I can use that role, that privilege, so to speak, to really kind of reach out to candidates that I know, you know, can do it, have the strengths to do it. But yeah.
So mine is not exactly replicable, but I actually, so my graphic designer and marketing manager that works with me, her resume caught my eye because she was coming from the company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin that makes the novelty cheesehead hats. And I have told her, your resume is going to get looked at no matter where you send it from now on. So you're not allowed to send it to anyone because you have to stay working with me. But that's not the reason I hired her, though. It is the reason that she stood out, but the reason that I hired her was also she did stand out in the initiative that she took at that job. She wasn't just a designer there. She set up a series of tours of the factory for people who were visiting. She was able to read contracts and understand them. She had a really broad knowledge base beyond just design, and she stood out for that reason too. And that part is replicable. So
We'll provide an example of maybe what not to do. I remember interviewing someone who spent probably 90% of the conversation talking about how difficult they were to work with. And so like they talked like it was a lot of things like, oh, you know, like I'm not afraid to like back down from confrontation and to like put my foot down. You know, I don't care what people think. I get the job done. And like what I would say on that is like I think it is common in our industry to like label people or to try to position yourself as like a rock star or as like a lone wolf who's like able to get it done. In my experience, like successful projects are made by like collaboration between like a wide variety of people. And so like that's what I'm always looking for. And so like there's nothing wrong with like being proud of your work and like advocating for yourself and like promoting all the things that like you've done well. But like what's really important is to show that like you were able to do those things through consensus building and collaboration and compromise and things like that. And so just I would say definitely promote yourself, but just be be mindful of like the story that you're telling about what type of coworker you are.
I think it's like super key. I think one interview that really stood out to me was actually what we've really been talking about this entire thing. That I think overarching theme is like it's you're supposed to ask questions as well. And I had a really good interview that it just was a conversation, and that was what was nice. It wasn't just like one of us like asking questions. It was like us just talking and being human. And that person definitely came in knowing exactly about our brand and things that we're looking for, what excites them, and about the culture, the innovation. I mean, it almost felt like, even though it didn't they weren't trying to teach me on my own brand, it just felt like they almost knew my brand more than I did at that point. And I found the company. It was just like, it was cool. So we had that conversation, and it really showed that they were just genuine. And I think for me, that's what I really look for, is just being you and not just being well-rounded in what you know about the company where you're going to work. They did the research. They were just human. I'm not like, I always say it's like, I'm not really hiring an employee. I'm like hiring someone as part of our team. I'm hiring a person. And that is so key in the whole thing. And, just being general and real. That's what really, because that's how you're going to fit into the culture at Rockshore. Is like, we are just real. We just like to be real people and have some fun and actually create some cool content. So.
And I'll chime in with my own personal experience. I remember there was a candidate who, on paper, their resume, their portfolio, their website was incredible, like just shining star. And I was so excited to interview them. And the minute that, we sat down, it was like completely 180. I expected this really radiant, vibrant personality because that's what the work had, but they were very timid and quiet. And there are people that are like that, and that's totally okay. But being able to, like Jordan mentioned, like speak for yourself well and represent yourself well, that I felt was missing. And it was, while I was interviewing this person, it felt like I was kind of pulling teeth to just get a sense of who they were as a person and not just as a designer. They presented their work for what it was, but they didn't really give the full picture, strategy thinking, or like, I was missing that passion and that fire. And I feel like that's something that you really need when you want to succeed as a designer and as a team member. So that it goes to show that having a kick-ass portfolio and resume is not all that it takes. It's only half of the battle. So make sure that you're really representing yourself well, and just stand up for yourself. We are at time, and I'm really, really gracious and thankful for all of your time today. It was such an amazing conversation. Like I mentioned, we will be sharing a PDF of everyone's information and bios, and some statistics, just so you have that to reference after this event. But again, thank you all so much. And I'll, people feel free to sign up if you want, but I'm going to open the floor for anyone that wants to plug your companies or any, hiring opportunities that you might have.
I'll go first real quick. The organization that I now work for is teamsubjectmatter.com. We're hiring for interns. It's intern season right now. So definitely get those applications in, but there's a lot of opportunities that are posted. Don't hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm going to kind of, sort of shuffle through it. I'm also pretty active on Twitter as well, but but yeah, if you guys want to share a resume or two, I'm going to be participating next week in the resume and portfolio review event. So feel free to connect with me then. But yeah, don't be a stranger.
Yeah, so Visit Baltimore, we're not currently hiring anyone for in-house, but I am always looking for freelance creatives to work with. I don't have a huge budget, so I don't have the budget to do as many projects as I would like in that regard, but I'm always looking for illustrator portfolios, photography portfolios, video production. Any creative work that we might want to partner on is great for me to see. If you want to check out our collateral, you can visit our website. It's baltimore.org, and you can see all of our website stuff. All of our publications that we put out are accessible there, and all of our socials are accessible there as well.
I have a few things that kind of add. We don't have actually official job postings, but there's going to be 3 positions coming soon. So we got some that are coming in late Q3, Q4. Kind of planning out like that structure. So some creative positions, but also business support positions. The other thing too is, our unique position for, our company is we just invested into this new technology with virtual production. So we have Maryland's first LED stage where we're really able to do full out production that they use for Mandalorian. So I just shot a beer commercial last week that I did the tropics, and I didn't have to go to the beach. Now, I love going to the beach, but I don't like going with all of our gear and all the stuff. And we were able to shoot the campaign really quick. And, that's really the future of the technology, and going into the innovation and the future of production. That's a whole nother subject line. But if you are in the works of like video and you're interested, it's really important that you have a focus and look into virtual production, because it is the future, of our industry. That's why we invested in our early adopters into it. So it's really unique what we're able to really do with the technology. So definitely, follow us on social to keep an idea, just follow the actual growth. We, brought the technology so the whole community itself can learn with it, because it's so new. And it's been really cool just seeing all the concepts and ideas that we're able to go from it. And then, we issue over 150 1099s like every year. So we hire a lot of freelancers. So even though we're not hiring full-time positions, we're hiring a lot of freelancers on a regular basis. So we're always looking for people to help with our projects, and it allows us to do that. So, maybe, this year we'll hit 200 total maybe, and some of that might be you. So feel free to reach out, stay connected on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the different social media platforms. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, we can definitely schedule some time. If you ever have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to take a look at your resumes, especially like if you're in the actual video fields, in animation, motion graphics. We're always looking for animators. There's a lot of animation work out there. So there's that. And if you have experience with designing stuff in Unreal Engine at all, if anyone's here, you never know. We're actively recruiting, developers for Unreal for our virtual production, studio. So a lot of cool things that we're doing with the technology side and how that is supported by creative. So yeah, just, feel free to stay connected on social, and, I hope you all enjoyed the event.
Awesome. I'll just say Fearless is growing very quickly, and so we're always hiring. And we have a multidisciplinary design practice, and so it's a wide net to get in where you fit in. But more immediately, we are looking for summer interns, and so we view our internship programs with very very intentionally. So this isn't an internship in which you'll be doing busy work or odd jobs for some executive. This is really a program to get to get you more experience and to get more job preparation for full-time work. And so for that, we're looking specifically for content designers, but very interested in interns with different passions. And then for full-time work, we are looking always on the lookout for product designers. So folks with design technology experience, UX experience, things like that, and also design managers. So more on the like operations side of the house. And so if you want to, for example, help make Medicaid and CHIP services, so like really important public services that like serve some of the most vulnerable people in this country, or if you want to help make it easier for people to like log in to U.S. Customs and Immigration Service platforms so that they can apply for immigration benefits or refugee and asylum. Like I would strongly encourage you to apply if you're just a couple of things that are coming up.
Awesome. And then last but not least, I'll plug a couple things on my end. I am a creative director at Fenton. We have an office in DC. I'm our first creative person in our DC location, and we're going to be growing very soon. So we're going to be looking at getting some fellows for our creative department very soon. So please keep an eye out on that. At Fenton.com. And then also I'm going to plug AIGA again because that's my job. AIGA Baltimore is always looking for volunteers and board members. Like I said before, it's a great way to connect with the community locally and nationally. There are so many people out there that can offer so many awesome resources. If you need someone that needs a specialized skill, you can find somebody in like Texas or like California. You never know. It's a really great network. So please, if you're interested, please sign up to be a member today. There's a lot of benefits to it. And with that, I want to just extend another big thank you to everyone. It's been a great chat this morning. I hope everybody has a great rest of your Saturday. And yeah, hopefully I'll see a few of you next weekend. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.